So I thought, as it's been Christmas time and I had a bit of time off, closed the shop and had some spare time to myself, that I would make myself a little Christmas gift. So I decided to make myself this modified tape player. As you can see, it's got this Walkman style tape player sort of bolted onto the front, and that's connected to these 4 speed knobs. Each of these speed knobs is connected to its own momentary switch, so as you press the button, this potentiometer comes into play and alters the speed that the tape is playing back. And doing this also sort of drags down the pitch of the tape. Because you've got these little buttons as sort of keys, you can essentially play it like a little keyboard. Then you can tune the pitch of the tape with these potentiometers, so each key will play the sort of note that you're looking for. Although, to be honest, the way that I'm doing this isn't necessarily that musical. I'm just doing it for the weird factor, so I'm not too fussed about hitting perfect notes. There's a little toggle at the bottom here which controls the play and stop. So when it's down, it's playing, and when it's up, it stops. And this second toggle switch here engages a delay circuit, which is the deforming delay, which is a delay pedal that I build and sell, which has actually been discontinued now. So sorry if you wanted one of those. There'll be something similar coming in the future if you keep an eye out. But it's essentially a PT2399 delay, so the karaoke chip that has been used to death, but it's cheap and cheerful, and you can get some pretty decent results with it. So I've popped one of those in here. This toggle here turns it on, and then you've got 3 knobs. One's controlling the time, one's controlling the feedback, and the other's controlling the blend. This particular machine is built with a cheap Chinese brand new tape player that you can buy on Amazon or eBay or any sort of generic online retailer, and they tend to be between about 15 and 20 quid.
You can also get them from like Alibaba if you were to buy in bulk, and you'd get a bunch of them for cheap, I'd imagine.
The reason I've bought a new tape player rather than just, buying some old thing off eBay is that I have bought loads of tape players off of eBay, and I have killed loads of tape players off of eBay, and this workshop is essentially a mass grave for them at this point. So yeah, if you are going to build this, I'd recommend just grabbing one of these off of eBay. I'll show a little picture of the one that I mean now. And the reason I would recommend doing that is because the older tape players, while you can get them sort of super cheap and easily on eBay, they do tend to need some TLC, so you'll probably have to replace the belt and possibly clean the insides with a bit of isopropanol, and doing so they're a bit finicky. It's just easier, I've found, to just buy them new, and it's less likely that things will go wrong. And seeing as it is a cheap tape player, the sound quality isn't incredible, but because I'm going for a bit of a lo-fi thing, I'm not that fussed about it. And I mean, tape tends to be relatively lo-fi at the best of times, so I'm just going to lean into that and make it as jank as possible. But yeah, it's a fun little project if you've got some time and you're into experimental music making. It's a fun little tool, and if you can make yourself some tape loops, you could have a loop that's just a constant pitch, and then as you adjust the speed, you'd be pitching that up and down, so you'd be able to get some more musical results, I'd imagine. But there is also some fun to just, throwing whatever you find in there. I've gone for this Midnight Mass tape as the tester for this, and that's what we're using in the sound demo at the end, which is a tape that Grindle from Life is Unfair kindly left behind here. I'm not sure if they were giving it to me or if they were lending it to me, but I've absorbed it into my hoard of stuff now, so it is mine. And that's about it. So let's have a look at how I put this thing together. The first thing I do with a project like this is pop all the knobs and the buttons onto the enclosure, mark where they were with a pencil, and then I'll take it down to the garage, use a center punch to make sure that the holes are in the correct spot, and I'll start drilling things out. Next I got to the tape player itself and started unscrewing things and pulling at the plastic to see if I could pry the case apart. It came apart relatively easy, to be honest. That's the innards there. Once I'd got the back off, I started poking about with the multimeter just to check what was going on. The first thing I clocked was these 2 wires that controlled the play-stop function. There it is, working. Initially, I just soldered a potentiometer over the speed trim to get things going. It didn't quite work as I wanted it to, so later on I just found 2 points that slowed down the machine and put a potentiometer there instead, which I'll show you in a bit. I used a breadboard to find the correct value for the pots, and then once I knew that they were linear 5K pots, I started loading them into the case. As you can see, I've only got the 4 pots going on at the minute, which were the speed pots, because I hadn't decided I was going to add a delay just yet. So here's my super professional diagram to show you how to wire this up. In the bottom left, you've got the power input. I'm going for 3.3 volts from a regulator, which I'm getting with a LM317. The schematic for that 3.3 volts is just in the bottom right corner. I'm doing this just to match the power that the batteries would have been supplying. You can see the toggle in the center there is to control the play stop. The yellow wire on the left is the output, which is going to the output jack via a toggle, which is bringing in the delay circuit. Obviously, I've used one of my own delays in this pedal, but you could add anything. You don't have to even use a delay. You could use any effect you fancy. You just pop it in as you would wire an effects pedal for a guitar. The green wires are going to the 2 points that I found that slowed the machine right down. They're connecting to the 4 speed potentiometers at the top via 4 momentary push buttons. You can obviously do this with as many potentiometer button combos as you want, and you might also want to just add a potentiometer that's always in the path so that you've got a sort of master clock control for the regular speed when no buttons are pressed. Cool, so I'm just working my way through the soldering, following that diagram that I've just shown you. And then as soon as I'd got all of that soldered up, I was in a position to just quickly pop some knobs on and check if we're getting sound. Cool, so once I knew that worked, I took it back down to the garage and got to drilling. So I'm just drilling through the battery compartment of the back plate of the cassette player. Because I wouldn't be using the batteries, there'd be a load of room there, so I could be relatively sloppy with the wires and still get away with it. To mount the case onto the enclosure, all I'm using is some M3 bolts, and then I've got a slightly bigger hole that I'm going to feed the wires through once that's mounted on there. After sorting those, I drilled the holes for the output jack and the DC jack, and also the holes for the toggle switches at the front. I think this is the point where I'd clocked that I could probably fit some more knobs on and get a delay in the case, and because the case is so big anyway, it felt a bit silly not filling it up. Here I'm wiring and labelling all the points that I want to feed through the case and solder into the guts of the box itself. It's kind of awkward to feed through, but got there in the end and had to poke it back into its case with some tweezers and then got to wiring it all up. So like I showed you in the diagram, I'm using a LM317 to provide the 3.3 volts of power that the cassette player is expecting to receive, and then I'm just feeding it via a regular DC jack. Once I'd built that, I wired it up quickly just to check that it was actually working correctly. So yeah, it was working fine, and I decided at this point I was going to snap this little door off because it was getting on my nerves, and I thought it would just look cooler if you could get access to here. Did also snap off this silver bit, which I regretted doing because the rest of the machine isn't stable enough to not wiggle about when you're putting tapes in, so I ended up just spray painting it black to get rid of that sort of tacky looking silver and attempted it again. Ran out of battery when I was drilling the holes for the pots, so that's not on camera, but here I am just popping them in. I did have to use 9mm pots because there wasn't much room between the existing pots to get these in there, and that's the deforming PCB there that I'm just butchering, and I'm only using part of that circuit just for a bog standard delay, and you could use any delay circuit for this bit or a reverb or a fuzz, whatever tickles your fancy. Yeah, here's that spray painted bit of plastic. I'd recommend properly waiting for it to dry because I didn't, and the tackiness did mess with the roller for a bit, and I had to clean it all with isopropanol again to get everything working nicely. At this point, we're essentially done. This is what it looks like. There's a bit of a rat's nest on the inside, but who cares? And the final ingredient is just printing off some labels so I can remember what each knob does. That's the last label there, so let's take this thing for a test drive.